A major fire downtown plays out all this week. What does the future hold for these apartments near the sports district, and how does it impact development downtown? Former City Council President Terrance Freeman joins us, and a nationally known voice on the economy and public policy.
As a business person, I build my company to serve a better job. You in Jacksonville, and the government, and your hospitals, and your schools, and but I'll make a broader point. Good public policy matters, and it can really accelerate growth here.
JPMorgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon is our guest on This Week in Jacksonville.
So glad you're with us today. So big news for the River City this week, with the country's largest bank announcing an expansion of about 50%. JPMorgan Chase plans to add 10 branches locally, in addition to its first private banking and client center in the area. I spoke with CEO Jamie Dimon at the branch downtown about a variety of timely issues. Dimon is outspoken on the crisis coming from the national debt and a seeming lack of accountability on passing a federal budget on time. I asked him if there are some reforms he believes will make a difference for the country.
The Congress sets its own rules. So, we have an annual budgeting process. I believe we haven't had a real budget for 12 years. But what the American public may not know is because there's no budget, it costs the government probably $500 to $100 billion more a year, because they have stop-start contracts. The military can't put in multi-year contracts. So it stops them. We have to get artillery shells to Ukraine, very hard to do. And it creates huge inefficiencies. Yes, one day they should reform it. And I think every government department should say to you, you gave me $100 billion, I said I was going to do X, and here's what I did. And also measure it in a way which the outcome. Very often they talk about, we spent $50 billion. Like schools should, I think all schools should say, how many of my kids got out with a good livelihood? So a school is to learn about life, it's also to walk out with a livelihood. You can graduate at 17, and one of the ladies out here came out of high school, and she's, already making $20 to $25 an hour here, with medical, with retirement, with dental, with maternity leave, paternity leave, et cetera. And so it's a job. Training leads to jobs, and we just have to get better at that. And I would like to see more outcome-based things. And so that could be for any department. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? Another thing which companies do, but the government doesn't necessarily, is constantly review its own processes to make them better. Don't just assume they're good. And, because sometimes they erode over time, and God, everyone deals with bureaucracy. You all know what it is when you see it. It's really bad for growth.
Here we are, 2024. 2020, obviously, pandemic changed a lot of things. One of those things was work from home. And you've been outspoken about, hey, for the sake of culture, no, employees, we want you back. Tell me more about that. Does it work for smaller companies, or do you think everybody should be back in the building, so to speak?
I look at it a little differently. It may work for certain jobs. So we've always had part of our 10% of our jobs where it's always been work from home 100%. Certain sales jobs, certain things. And other jobs, like there's certain legal jobs, like patent lawyers, where it works because it's a lot of solitude. Studying law, going to libraries, looking at patents around the world. But for a lawyer who's serving our investment bank, they should be with the bankers. So it's not just the job title, it's a specific job. But there are a lot of weaknesses from it. It hurts younger people. There's almost no question. Now you're starting to see studies show it. We knew it from the start. They have less relationships. They don't get to see you in action. You don't tell them they did a great job, but it hurts creativity. It hurts speed of decision making. It hurts management decisions. It slows down everything, because people, instead of, like when we have a management meeting around a table like this, all day long we're going back to say, hey, you said that, I checked, it's why. Or why don't I make that call with you? Let's plan a trip there. Or meanwhile, when you're doing it by Hollywood Squares, it's like, we'll pick it up again tomorrow, or pick it up again next week. And so we know there are weaknesses. So it doesn't mean it can't be done, but people should acknowledge the weaknesses. And there's the social attributes. People have to get married. People have to meet friends. We think it helps diversity that when you come to the workplace, you probably have a more diverse environment than where you live.
At your apartment or home, yes.
Exactly. So people just be clear about the negatives. It's like now we're learning about the negatives of kids not having gone to school.
Yeah.
Now a lot of us kind of knew that, and a lot of moms and dads set up home pods, school pods and stuff like that. But those things, people should be clear about it, be thoughtful about the full breadth of things it means, not just, I like working from home. I like a lot of things, and I don't get to do all of them either. So,
am I right? Is culture very high value for you with the company?
Very, and you mentioned that it's very hard to instill. We hired 40,000 people during COVID. That never met in person a JPMorgan Chase person. So when we talk about how we treat a customer, part of that culture you don't learn because it's treat a customer well. You learn because when the customer walks in is quite distraught, you can see how the excellent branch manager said, "We're sorry, and let me sit down, and I can fix that for you." We want our people to admit mistakes when we make them, and you learn that by seeing it. You were probably a young reporter one day, and some probably took you around and every now and then chewed you out and said, and that's how you learned. And so it reduces learning and it reduces the ability to instill culture.
So on the idea of culture, and we're talking policy just a little bit, in the state of Florida specifically, it's happened some other places, but there's been a push to legislate against diversity, equity, inclusion. And you just brought up diversity by just being in the workplace. What do you think about that topic? And from a leadership standpoint, isn't there some kind of conscientious leadership that demands diversity, equity, inclusion?
Yeah, I think people are getting confused and all this stuff. Like, the Supreme Court basically changed the law. And we all, when the Supreme Court votes, that's the end of it to me. We're going to follow the law. And I'm going to summarize, they're against quotas. And we never had quotas. Viscerally, I didn't like them either. But it doesn't mean you can't reach out to the community. So we reach out to all communities, black communities, LGBT communities, and then you learn in doing that, you learn a lot of things about how to serve the community better. We're a business. If you're a restaurant, you're reaching out to the people too, and you want people coming to your restaurant. And if you get more traffic coming to the restaurant by reaching out to different communities, you probably would. So people should take a deep breath in this one. Most people want to treat all communities well. They don't want to treat anyone rudely. I don't want anyone working here to not feel comfortable here. And all people are different, including white men. There are shy white men, there are aggressive white men, there are people who are on the spectrum somewhere, but they want to have a happy, productive job. And we try to reach out to them too. So it makes sense, it makes community better.
A lot of people would say that China is the big threat in a lot of different ways. Certainly in business, there's a lot of ties between what happens American business and Chinese business. Is that a concern for you, or is there a way that you see forward where we're still intertwined, but providing security for our nation?
A big question. So geopolitics, because of Ukraine, the terrorist activity in Israel, what's going on there, is a critical thing and is affecting all global relationships, military alliances, and economic, including America and China. And the America-China's relationship is the most important relationship in the next 100 years. And I like the engagement. Obviously, every country is going to say national security, so we support the fact, and I'm an American patriot. I don't set foreign policy, so very often, are you doing this? That's foreign policy. That's the government does that. But anything around protecting national security, well, of course we should do. And that affects certain economic investments, trade relationships. Anything which is unfair competition, well, of course we should combat that. We do that anyway. That's, you want to do that. And then other than that, you can have trade. Certain things, honestly, when you make it or something doesn't make any difference. Other things, if it hurts the Americans' military ability to conduct combat operations around the world, you're damn straight we should do it differently. So it could be worked out. It's going to be very complicated. It can only be worked out in engagement.
There's much more with Jamie Dimon. I've got it for you on This Week in Jacksonville Business Edition. That's our podcast focusing on economic development of the River City and our region. Jamie Dimon also talking with me in that podcast about the reason JPMorgan Chase chose to expand in Northeast Florida right now, plus his views on the national debt crisis. You can find new episodes every Thursday, 9 a.m., and you're going to find it right now on News4Jax Plus under the channel This Week in Jacksonville. You also find This Week in Jacksonville Business Edition available wherever you find your podcast, like Apple, Spotify, or Google. All right, up next, we welcome back Jacksonville City Councilman Terrance Freeman, the former City Council President, next on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville with Kent Justice.
It's City Councilman Terrance Freeman joining us today, and we're going to talk about some city issues in just a moment. But Terrance Freeman, I've known you a little bit, and I know that what you've told me is you are on a mission to talk about what's happened in your personal life when it comes to your health. And you said, I want to share this because I want to help make a difference in other people's lives. So, broadly speaking, tell people what's been going on and what you're fighting through.
Well, Ken, thank you for having me. And I tell you, it is great to be here. Having experienced the journey that I just recently came through, really changed my lens of how I view life and how I view the future. Getting that diagnosis in July just stopped everything.
Yeah. Tell people what the diagnosis was.
The diagnosis was prostate cancer. And having to share that news with my 4 daughters and my wife, and then holding my little son, just left in a quandary. Like, where do I go? What do I do? I'm very grateful for the healthcare system that we have with Mayo, the great partners there, and UF Health. But then that created kind of a buzz in me that, wow, okay, I had access to it. What about others? And then when I learned about how it ravages the African-American community, it was something that I said, my father had it, that there's a bigger role I can play. And I'm just grateful for my colleagues on the council as I took time away to really focus on my health. I'm grateful for my job at Miller Electric, who allowed me to come in every day. Some days I may not have been at my best, but the culture we have there, trust and just collaboration, they really worked with me as I worked through that challenge in my life.
Yeah, so what is the prognosis, or where you're at in treatment, and maybe talk about, some people, they get that diagnosis maybe too late to have a great outcome like we're hoping for you.
Well, I'll tell you, it's 97% curable if it's caught early. And for me, I rang the bells on December 22nd, which I cried, and wasn't much of a crier until I came into this political arena. I did this all for my kids, and they were there with me. But since going public, and I really struggled with, should I keep this to myself and just go through this battle quietly, or should I share it with the world? And I realized that I'm in this position to help others. And if I'm truly going to answer that calling in my life, I needed to share that with others. And Ken, I'll tell you, every week I get no less than 2 or 3 calls from someone in our community, regardless of their status, regardless of their socioeconomic status, saying, hey, I saw your story, I went and got tested, and can I ask you some questions? And now I'm walking hand in hand with several people right now going through that journey, and just sharing with them what I've learned, and just saying, hey, you gotta believe in this process. You got to be 100% confident in it, and it is curable.
And you said your father had prostate cancer as well.
Yes, my father had it.
Did that help you take some of the steps to be able to detect this early, or was it still, oh, I should have done more earlier on?
I'll tell you, no. I was healthy. I was coaching, weight room, running, serving, multiple hours during the week, and just through a simple physical in my PSA. And now when I talk with individuals, especially males, I'll ask you, have you had your PSA checked lately? Yeah. When you look at women, they have it figured out. Buddy check. I mean, they have this designated time of the year where they really emphasize it. But when you come to men, it's kind of taboo. We don't talk about it. And so for me, I am making a concerted effort when I talk to anybody, my friends, people I don't know, I ask them that question. Have you had it? And it also has stemmed into the mental health aspect of it. Because as I share with my colleagues, every morning when I would wake up and then go out for treatment, depression was knocking at the door. And I had a choice, either to let it in and go lay down in the bed and feel sorry for myself and just really feel weak and bad, or get up and go to work. And like I said, I was grateful for Miller. But there's more that we can do in this area of really trying to help people. Because cancer, I had a network around me. At UF, we had groups, and we had family. I had family, I had friends. And then when you pivot into the mental health areas, they don't necessarily have that. And so we need to continue to do the work in that area as well.
Yeah, as you and I have gotten to know each other over the years, that we've got some baseball commonality. You were a professional baseball player. My father-in-law played in the major leagues. The first time I came to Jacksonville was in 2009 because my father-in-law, who lived in Cleveland, found out he had prostate cancer. And he said, I'm looking around for the best place. And he said, the UF Proton Therapy Institute in Jacksonville is where I'm going to go. First time we came was because of that medical care and that specific issue. And I'm grateful, like you're talking about, I'm grateful that it was caught early, because then you can treat it and you've got a life ahead of you instead of going, boy, it's all over.
Absolutely. And I must say, at Mayo, that's where they initially diagnosed it. The doctors stayed on me, Mr. Freeman, can we look a little further? And I said, Mayo saved my life. And then as I did my research and did exploring for my family, for my situation, proton therapy would just seem to be the best route for me. But as I share with individuals now that call me, I tell them, do your due diligence.
Yeah, right.
Find out what's best for your quality of life.
What's best for you, right. Absolutely. Before we take a break and talk about some city issues there, maybe that last thing, what is your opinion on this? You said initially you thought, I'm not sure I want to share this publicly. We saw the Secretary of Defense at the beginning of the year. He had prostate surgery, and initially he didn't want to share that with anyone close to him too. Is there something you would tell people about, hey, here's the value in sharing that?
Absolutely. I think that if you're willing to stand forward, step up and stand forward and share it, each one tell one, you're saving lives. This is a disease that is curable. You look at a couple weeks ago with Dexter King losing his life. This is something that if we're open about it and we're willing to have that dialogue and that discussion, people can get in and get the treatment, get the test they needed, to get their PSA checked regularly, to discover if they have it early. And when caught early, it is curable. Yeah. And so I would encourage everyone out there, please, man, go get tested.
Yeah. It's part of my every year see the doctor, have a physical. Okay, we're going to check that. Whether it's comfortable or not, it's important to do. Some important issues that we're going to talk about in just a moment, so stay with us. More with City Councilman Terrance Freeman, including a look at what's going on in Duval County and the city of Jacksonville. So stay with us for more on This Week in Jacksonville.
You're watching This Week in Jacksonville on Channel 4.
I appreciate City Councilman Terrance Freeman staying with us. So we've talked through that very important mission that you've got here. Let's talk about some of the important things going on in the city of Jacksonville. You were council president. And what we saw a week ago, this fire and the apartment building there, the sports district, it was almost completed. And what were your hopes for what this was going to do for the downtown area or that sports district?
Man, again, one is a tragic occurrence that happened downtown. When I heard of the news, I couldn't first but think, one, was there anybody in the building? Was anybody injured? Once that was disclosed that there was no one injured, my next thought was for the men and women of JFRD, who for hours, countless hours, were out there fighting that fire, protecting the infrastructure around it, and really wanted to give them a shout out and thank them for their service to our community. Buildings can be rebuilt and repaired, but we only get one life, and so I want to thank them for their service. Was it discouraging to see it be so close to the finish line and only to find itself in ashes? Yes, but I'm still bullish on downtown. We know that it will be rebuilt, it will come back, and there are other future things coming in that area, be it from the stadium talks to another, maybe a potential Lot J, from maybe a UF grad school, the Armada with soccer. There's so much energy and excitement that that one little setback, sometimes you got to take one step back to go forward to, and I think this is one of those scenarios.
It's not going to stop things.
It will not stop.
Slow it down for a minute.
Yes.
Because we understood that some of the first residents were moving in this spring or even this winter. The Rise Doro apartment building is what we're talking about. The Rise CEO locally came out the day of the fire and talked about it. That's pretty strong when you see business owners engaged at that level. Hey, let me come talk to you right now about what's going on.
Yeah, I always have the utmost respect when leaders are willing to come forward and to stand before our community and to answer the tough questions and to share their hearts and share their feelings. So many times we're hidden behind the narrative of the news or whatever the spin is, but when they're willing to put themselves forward, I mean, I have the utmost respect for them, and I wish them the best as they continue to travel down this new road and getting their project back up and going.
Sometimes in a crisis, it's like, well, I don't want to say the wrong thing, but there's value in saying some of the right things. I also want to talk about this. You mentioned, hey, let's talk about OGC, so the Office of General Counsel, and then the Transparency Act. What are you looking for there? Yeah,
really, I'm just looking for us to get back to just following the process. If you think back during my year as president, that was one of the biggest things for me, was really trying to take a look at processes. And one of them was a special committee on Office of General Counsel, where I had Councilmember Precy Jackson, Councilmember DeFord that all served with me. And we really identified several areas within that department that were in need. And so now you fast forward to these last couple months, and we've noticed that there's been a little bit of chaos. There's no indictment on those who fulfill that role. I am positive that there are amazing litigators in the courtroom, but when you're coming to this monstrosity of consolidated government, it's not something that you step in day one and you know exactly what to do. And so one of the biggest questions that I've always asked is, who's your client? And so I think that's one of the things that we're working through. When you look at some of the things that have happened in the past, their interpretation of it, the process, it's been abused a little bit.
Well, so that with consolidated government, it's so unique, the municipality here, consolidated Duval County. How would you say the answer should be for Office of General Counsel? Who is the client for OGC?
Yeah, I ultimately tell you that the citizens are their client, but you know, some of the challenges that we've faced so far, Government's all about checks and balances. And here at the local level, we have the executive branch and the legislative branch. I've personally experienced a scenario where from a legislative side, I needed some questions answered. And then had witnessed that it had been answered from the executive side. And so I asked that question again, like, who is your client? And I think as we continue to go down this path, that decision or that topic is going to be spoken on. I would love to lead maybe another special committee on it and just really narrow it down to, you got school board versus city council, or if you got JEA versus school board, whatever the scenario may be, and you have one person sitting in the middle, how can they effectively serve two different clients when they're in the same body of government?
Before we run out of time, but as I understand it, that was important for consolidation because you didn't want to have a lawyer for the mayor, a lawyer for council, a lawyer for JEA, a lawyer for a lawyer. You wanted to have somebody to consolidate that. And we got about 30 seconds.
100%. It is definitely the glue of consolidated government. However, if you have a situation where general counsel starts to feel pressure from, let's say, the council side or from the administrative side, that it starts to lean a bias towards a certain direction, now we have some challenges. And we want to make sure that we really find ways to overcome those challenges so that we can continue to do the good work in our city.
I think there's more to come on this topic, but I'm so glad you decided you would come in and visit with us for a little while. Terrance Freeman, thank you so much.
No, thank you.
All right. So This Week in Jacksonville airs each Sunday morning at this time. We had to postpone our conversation with the Secretary of State to next time. So Cord Bird is planning to join us in 1 week. We're also welcoming Dr. Michael Binder back from UNF. I'm Kent Justice. Thanks for watching on air on Channel 4 and the CW17, and then online at news4jax.com or streaming on News4Jax Plus. Have a great day.